Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek, I got a super fun and super exciting episode for you guys today because your mayor, my mayor, everyone's mayor is back for another round of beat 'em up action. That is because Mike Hager is on your screen because I am playing the demo for Mighty Final Fight Forever. It is basically a complete remake, reimagining, or whatever the hell you want to call it, of Mighty Final Fight from the NES to modern platforms. And when I say Final Fight is still one of the best beat 'em up franchises ever made, and that Final Fight and Mike Hager are definitely part of gaming history, I 100% mean it. What you have on offer here for the demo of Mighty Final Fight Forever is absolutely stunning, and I can't wait to see the full game launch. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But if you never played Mighty Final Fight back on the NES, you would think to yourself, but Final Fight started in arcades and got ported to the Super Nintendo, Sega CD, and computer platforms back in the day. And that is true, but because Final Fight was such a big hit for Capcom, they wanted a version of it on the Nintendo Entertainment System, so we got Mighty Final Fight. And for the longest time, that game has been a ton of fun, but it's always felt to me more of like a Double Dragon game than an actual Final Fight game. And I would say Forever here definitely straddles the line between the two. But I absolutely love the super deformed chibi style that was in the original Mighty Final Fight, and it's coming across on screen so well here. The characters, how they kind of have completely weird proportions, and gigantic bug eyes when they get hit just work. But the number one thing I always talk about when I talk about a beat 'em up is hit detection. You've all played those beat 'em up games before where you feel like you should be hitting your opponent, you're lined up with them, but for some reason your attack just whiff right straight through their sprite. You are not going to have any issues with that whatsoever in Mighty Final Fight Forever. If you're missing attacks, that means your lineup isn't correct and the game isn't screwing you over. It is your own fault. And that is the cardinal sin of beat 'em up games that I always talk about when I talk about new beat 'em ups. And trust me, Forever here, no issues in that department whatsoever. And I absolutely love all the new redrawn graphics as well. All of these characters are going to be familiar from other Final Fight games, but they have that chibi aesthetic to them. But when you hit an opponent, their eyes are going to just basically pop out of their sockets, really selling kind of that slapstick comedy anime aesthetic going on. And that definitely is working here. Even Mike Hager, when you're getting hit, you're going to see his eyes pop out, and it absolutely has a ton of facial expressions. So the developers here, especially the artists that did the sprites and all the animations, he did a 10 out of 10 job on these things, absolutely nailed the brief. There's so much charm and character, and I can't wait to see what comes next. Because this is based on a PC open board, you're going to have a full suite of options. You're going to be able to rebind the controls whatever you want. I use the Tier Octopus Fight Stick here because I could get an arcade stick in. And I'm sure you'll see even more options when the full version of this game comes out. Because do be aware, this is just a demo. Apparently the developers might have this thing up by the end of the year, but we'll just have to wait and see. And in this demo, Cody and Hager are going to be selectable. You have a 2-player option, but right now you're missing one character. But again, as far as the demo is concerned, this thing absolutely makes me hungry to play the full version of the game, and that's really all I ever asked for of a demo. I want to be intrigued, I want to see what's going on, and I want to be made to actually experience the full thing when it comes out. And the best part is obviously this is $0 as a demo and as a full version of a game because it's just a fan-made release. But if you played the NES original back in the day, you might have some nostalgia for it, but if you didn't, it really is kind of hard to go back to because it is pretty rudimentary compared to Final Fight, and I would say the colorways and graphics maybe not my favorite. The best part is every single pixel here has been redrawn for this new version of the game. I love the colors on the screen, I love the character designs. It really just kind of feels like a cartoony version of Final Fight, and that's exactly what Mighty Final Fight was, and that is what Forever is just doing that much better. But of course it has a slight power advantage compared to the original Nintendo Entertainment System. At this point in time, a rotten potato with a couple copper wires put in power into it would definitely outperform the NES CPU. And as we move into the second area here, this rooftop, you see you get a tiny bit of parallax as well. Not so heavy that it kind of distracts the eye, but just enough so you get a little intrigue. And because this game is completely remade, you get a new soundtrack as well, some new elements in the music, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds or so, but come back because I'll show you where this demo goes, and I'll talk about why this is one of my favorite fan games of 2025, at least in the beat 'em up genre is concerned. But then again, it's not going to get all that many in a year, so it doesn't have a lot of competition, but even if it did, I would still say this thing is definitely leading the charge. But here's the music, and I'll be right back. Absolutely love the music, no complaints in that department. I love that there's a Captain Commando billboard up there as well, one of Capcom's other games from that era. The only thing in the audio department I would say, and again this is just based on the default options, is the strikes and punches and kicks are a little bit low compared to the music. And I totally get that the developers, so I wanted to emphasize just how good and new this music is, but I want to hear those impacts as well, because one of the things about a beat 'em up is you really want to feel like you are hitting your opponent, and because obviously back in the day force feedback wasn't a thing, the sound effects, those meaty thwacks of a pipe hitting a skull when you actually picked up a weapon, or that wet sounding effect when you actually stab somebody, that definitely ties you into the game a little bit more. So that's one thing here, and probably my only critique of the entire demo that I would love to see slightly changed for the release version, just bringing those sound effects up a little bit. But I even love this little bit of blood splatter you get here when you stab your opponent, something that generally you wouldn't be allowed to get away with on the NES back in Nintendo's very family friendly era. But these type of projects I absolutely love, because Mighty Final Fight was always a fun game, but again it was one, at least in my opinion, that was hard to go back to, because I don't think it aged as well as some other beat 'em ups from the NES. I'd rather play something like a Battletoads than I would like to play something like a Mighty Final Fight, but that's at least me. You can definitely leave me a comment down below and tell me how you feel about it. But this is the type of game, it's going to get a lot more people to experience what Mighty Final Fight was, and it's also going to give you a new fun free beat 'em up to play, and that is definitely something we should welcome, because right now beat 'em ups I feel like are seeing a little bit of a renaissance, at least in new games. We've gotten some decent beat 'em ups and even some running guns in 2025, so I really hope that trend continues into 2026. And honestly, it's just wild to me that we're in the last month of the year and that 2026 is that close on the calendar. It feels like I started this year off talking about stuff, and all of a sudden 12 months later we're still here talking about more fun retro games. But honestly, as far as Final Fight Forever is concerned, I just want to see more of this thing, because of course this is just going to be a demo, and you'll see here a boss that's going to seem familiar, but not in the place you would expect him to see him, and that is because Mighty Final Fight, and by extension Mighty Final Fight Forever, is going to differ completely in some aspects from the arcade original or the Super Nintendo or Sega CD ports. And of course we have Final Fight MD, the new Mega Drive conversion of Final Fight as well that we've talked about on the channel, meaning that this has been a very busy 2025 for Final Fight, outside of the fact that Capcom really hasn't given us any new games in the franchise. So Capcom, if you're listening, give Final Fight to one of the developers that's been making the modern beat 'em up games that we all absolutely love, and just let them make a new Final Fight game for everyone, because you ended the series basically on Streetwise, and trust me, that is not a good last act for what is a very storied franchise in video game history. Let's do one more soundtrack sample from an earlier level, and we'll switch characters as well, because even though Mike Hagar is the only right choice for Final Fight, I totally understand that some people disagree with me. If you do, you're wrong. Hagar is king. But again, we'll take a look at a different character and give you another soundtrack sample. But I'll be right back. Because I lied to you there a bit, and I even lied to myself because I thought that the first area in the game had a different soundtrack sample than the second, but I was wrong, so I re-rolled some of that Hagar boss fight music so you could get a second taste of some of the music in the game. But honestly, Mighty Final Fight Forever is just 100% firing on all cylinders. If the actual finished game is as good as the demo, I think you're in for a very big treat. And again, because this is a fan project, not something you're going to be buying, the risk is very low of giving it a shot either in demo format or when it actually comes out as a full game. So again, if you want to play this one today, the link is in the description below. You can pop over there and grab it, and if you have already played it, leave me a comment and let me know what you think. And honestly, I wish Barrels Outside had fresh cooked hamburgers for me as well. The amount of food that you can find in Final Fight just basically means that you actually don't have to go to a restaurant and spend any money on food, because Hagar is going to find an entire roast on the ground and somehow he eats it and never gets food poisoning, and that might be the most impressive fact of Final Fight of all. You can leave meat on the street out in the sun and you'll be totally fine eating it. But we're done. You got that little fact, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.